Hey Myles here at Tactical Hyve. It is Monday, so that means it's another dry fire session. And the previous weeks we've been talking about the draw and adding a precursor to movement, and we will be coming back to that. We'll continue on that series later on as we get more advanced doing moving and shooting. We're also going to be starting to work on transitions down the road. I'm giving you guys a little bit of taste of what's to come. But before we do, I want to address some questions that we received and some of the comments based on all of the content that we've covered. So there were 3 that stand out, so I do want to talk about them in this video. So if you're interested, stay tuned. All right, welcome back. So the questions we received primarily revolve around grip and recoil management, and 3 stand out the most, so I want to address those. First is having maximum friction over the gun. So we already talked about that. And what that means is we want contact with the grip, as much contact as possible with your pistol's grip with both of our arms. Now, why is that important? So this is the specific point that I want to get at. You don't want the gun to move within your hands, flopping around, or you don't want your grip to break and slide off. That's why you need maximum friction. You do want as much contact points, and those contact points should be steady and stable. So again, there's no movement. So let me explain. So I already talked about how your hands can move and slip out from the gun, but there's also the opposite. Your hands might be in the right place, but the gun might move within your hands. So take a look at this here. It's an exaggeration here. So look at my support hand. I'll use both hands here. So look at my support hand here. If I do this correctly, and there's recoil and there's muzzle flip, notice how my hand and the gun are basically one unit. It's like they're one part, okay? One piece. If I have very little friction and I don't have enough pressure here, look what happens here. My arm is going to stay in one place, but notice how I'll go from the bottom or else the gun will tip. Notice this might happen. See how my hand is here. My hand and my arm are here, but the gun moves within the hand, okay? What I want is when the gun recoils and flips, it should be all one motion here, okay? One unit. With the fire hand, it's kind of the same thing. If I break a shot here, all right, so I have my dry fire mag, I'm going to be using this throughout, and this is going to come in handy during this dry fire session. But if I squeeze that trigger, this is the correct way, and I get muzzle flip, I want this to be one unit, okay? This should not happen. What I'm going to use my left hand to mimic, I don't want to pull the trigger, and then my hand kind of stays here, but it's flopping around within. So I don't want the gun moving around within my hand, so you have to have maximum friction. So what we're going to do in dry fire here to address that first point is any dry fire exercise you want, okay? You could be doing transitions, you can do it from the draw, but what I want you to do is, remember, have that focus point. Every rep, you're going to really now focus in on having good friction and good grip tension. You don't want to be too tense, okay, because tension is going to affect your speed and your movement in transitions, but you want it to be firm enough so that the gun is not going to flip in your hand, right? You have to have maximum friction. So when I'm doing my drills, maybe I'm taking from high ready or the draw 2 shots, I am going to stop and also ask myself, do I have good friction? Do I have really, really good firm grip? Yes, I understand we don't have the recoil happening. This is not live fire yet, but you are going to test yourself on Thursday. The key here is that you need to mimic. You need to get the right feeling of live fire and understand what that is during your live fire sessions, and then copy it during your dry fire. If the gun is flipping in your hands, that might mean you might be not taking your dry fire seriously. So whenever you're doing your dry fire, maybe you're just gripping very lightly, and then when you go to the range, you're going to grip lightly, and then all of a sudden, the gun flips within your hands. We want this all to be one unit. So that's what you're going to focus on for your first reps here. Once again, do anything you want to, but just as you're doing the rep, good friction on the gun, take your shots. Then at the end, finger off the trigger, make sure you have good friction, good grip pressure. Then when you're satisfied, put the gun away, do another rep. So that's the first thing we want to address. Have good friction on the gun. We don't want the gun moving inside of your hand. The second thing I wanted to address was, what should your arms be doing? And we alluded to this in one of the other videos that we created. Recoil management is, you shouldn't take it in a bucket. And if you go to classes, sometimes the instructor is going to focus on just one aspect of recoil management specifically because that is all the class is ready for. An instructor may not want to throw everything at the class because they're just not going to remember everything or appreciate things or understand everything. So we split things up where in ideal situations and overall, your stance is going to be the best passive recoil management mechanism you have. Your shooting platform will allow you to manage that recoil and get your sights back on target. But we also talked about how there are layers, and that only pertains to if you have a good stance, you have that opportunity. But we know we always can't be in a good stance. So there's another layer to that where you can accept that recoil through your shooting platform on the upper body, the arms, okay? We're not just talking about grip, we're talking about everything here. We're talking about your wrist, your elbow, your shoulders, even your lats. And all of that are kind of I like to call it the insurance policy. If you don't have a good stance, you have to know that. So the one thing that I want to drive in as it relates to this second point, recoil management, and what your arms are doing is what we talked about before, where you don't want to be too tense. And this is another reason why people will say don't lock your arms out, because if they're completely locked out, there's no give here, and you're tense. And what will happen here are two things can happen. One, if you have completely locked out arms here, the recoil is not going to be absorbed by your arms. So you'll be pushed back much more. Secondly, if you have all of your joints locked up, there's a chance that your wrist will give, because your wrist is weaker than your elbows and weaker than your shoulders. So if these are tight and not moving because you've completely locked them, you're so tense, you may now see the muzzle flip much, much higher. And so we want to avoid that. So what you're going to do in your dry fire, the second thing is you're going to have good reps, pick whatever you want to from the draw, but now you're going to tell yourself, okay, these few next reps, I'm going to relax my arms as much as possible and try just to have the tension where I'm supposed to have the tension. Okay, and that is primarily in your grip. Yes, I don't believe we covered it, but later on we will. But you will have some tension, a little bit tension. We're not talking a lot. In your lats, okay? In your lats, because you want to engage your shoulders a little bit backwards into the pocket, which we'll talk about later on. The main thing is on these next few reps, when you present your gun, you want to be relaxed with your arms. You want to have a slight bend. This way, when the gun goes bang and you feel that rearward force, there's the highest potential that you're going to absorb some of that force with your arms rather than your body getting completely taken back because everything is locked. And this also will help ensure that you have good wrist tension so that the gun is not going way up there, right? Because if you lock your elbow, you lock your shoulder, then all that pressure is going to come down to the wrist. So do that a couple times, and what you're going to do is the same thing with the grip friction, is when you present, you can take your shots. From here, you can stop and then be your own judge and jury. Do you have relaxed arms? Do you feel tension? You can push down on your muscles, and if you feel they're tense, then you know you're tense. What you want is, when you're doing this, you stop, you can put your arms down, whichever one, and you should feel your muscles or your traps, all that should be like a pillow. There's give, rather than just, like touching a rock, okay? So that's the second thing I want to address. The third grip consideration I want to talk about, which is very common, is thumb placement, what your thumb should be doing. This is an interesting topic because you're going to hear lots of different things from different instructors, but you honestly can shoot a pistol without your thumbs. You don't need your thumbs. But you will hear people say different things, and they're not necessarily wrong. It's just something that's working for them. So they can be conveying it to you as a student, and if you hear it, you might think that's gospel, but it isn't necessarily the case. Again, you can shoot a gun without your thumbs. Your thumbs really don't need to do anything. So to address the question of what your thumb should be doing, I say just do what is comfortable for you, right? As you progress in shooting and shoot a lot more, you're going to tweak your grip over and over and over again to find the grip that is most comfortable and the one that performs well for you, meaning your shots are exactly where they want to be. There's not going to be a lot of muzzle movements because that's the grip that works for you. I talked about in our grip video how a lot of people will say to line up the thumb with the slide. which, you know, it's very common and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you feel more comfortable doing this, experiment with it. Go for it. As long as the principles, remember that, go back to previous videos, you know, a lot of more and more instructors are doing this now where they're focusing on the principles rather than the techniques, because techniques are just a matter of style. Everyone dresses differently, just like the same thing. Everyone has different grip technique, but the principles of good friction on the gun are important. So I would look for comfort initially. That's the most important thing. If you feel comfortable putting your thumbs up like this, then go for it, right? Let's say with this, with the control hand or the support hand. With your fire hand, there are some instructors who will say to keep this thumb up. Is it wrong? No, it's not necessarily wrong, because again, it is a matter of technique. If I put my thumb up, I can still get maximum friction and just keep this thumb up and continue shooting. Is it wrong to put the thumb down? Maybe if you have problems with it or it's uncomfortable, yes. One of the arguments for keeping the thumb up is that you're not going to drive this down. So there's no tendency to push down. Let's say if you're nervous, there's no tendency to push down on this other control hand or the support hand and get it out of position, right? So again, pros and cons, there's good reasons and bad reasons, but look for comfort. You can keep your thumbs up, you can keep your thumbs forward, try them all out, see what works best for you. So during your dry fire, this is very simple. It is addressing these 3 points, but before you start your dry fire exercises, you're going to focus in on one of the 3 items we talked about today. And then as you're doing the rep, focus on that, and then also do a quick check at the end to ensure that you had good friction, or that you had relaxed arms, or that your thumbs were in the position that you want them to be in. So very simple dry fire session today. This is all going to help out for live fire. We'll drive in the points we discussed today and then add a few more details. So make sure to dry fire this week, and then I'll see you guys on Thursday during the live fire session. As always, if you like the video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Leave some comments below. Is the series helping you out? Do you have any questions? And don't forget to subscribe. We release a video every single day, so you want to make sure you're tuned in. Take it easy, guys.